Dear friends, I'm Ambassador Bokor, Consul General of Hungary in Los Angeles. At the same time, I'm the Vice Chairman of the Ronald Reagan Memorial Committee in Hungary. This year we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the birth of President Ronald Reagan, and at the same time we just celebrated the 55th anniversary of the October 23rd, 1956 Hungarian Revolution. This revolution, which was bloodily oppressed, was a sign that communism cannot exist anymore in the same old form. On the 30th anniversary of the 1956 revolution in 1986, President Ronald Reagan issued a National Hungarian Freedom Fighters Day proclamation stating, "The people of Hungary have contributed many chapters to the history of struggle for liberty, but never more nobly than 1956. On October 23rd of that year, Hungarians, including the young people, rose up in a revolt against communist dictatorship and Soviet occupation. The freedom fighters, as they were called by a word amazed at the heroism and idealism, fought almost barehanded against heavy odds, and soon fell a victim to treachery and ruthless suppression. But they lit a candle of hope and inspiration that can never be extinguished. The Hungarian freedom fighters of 1956 perished or suffered exile, but their sacrifice lives on in the memory of the Hungarian people." President Reagan had the imagination to understand that the Hungarian Revolution of 1956 was a historic event. 33 years later, in 1989, the communist system could not face anymore the huge popular pressure, and the people of Central and Eastern Europe took finally the decision into their own hands. Democratic elections took place in Hungary and elsewhere in the region. A new period started in the history of the world. That is why we call 1989 the year that changed the map of Europe and then the world. "Tear down this wall," said President Reagan to the first secretary of the Soviet Communist Party. With the opening of the Hungarian border toward Austria, Hungarians knocked out the first brick. Later the wall collapsed and brought with it the demise of the Soviet Empire and the era of the communist regime. Hungary and other countries in the region held captive behind the walls of the socialist bloc were liberated finally. A new world was created, and the reunification of the divided Europe, of the divided Western civilization began. I was present in Budapest on June 29 this year when we erected a statue to the man and to the leader who changed, who renewed the world, and in it our Central European world also. A man who believed in liberty, in the moral power of free man, and the wall standing in the way of freedom can be torn down. He was the one who stood by his conviction that one could not live together with the bad, that there was no peaceful coexistence and no compromise with the evil. However great and mighty it is, one has to fight it and win over it. When he entered office, he placed a sign on his desk in the Oval Office which said, "It can be done." And that was what he did. He broke taboos, swept aside dogmas believed to be eternal, all in the name of the common sense. He tore down the walls that were erected in the way of freedom by the distorted and sick ideologies of the 20th century. The walls that separated one side of the Western civilization from the other. However, Ronald Reagan is not only important for us because of the past, but he is equally important for us for the present and for our future. What we are doing for ourselves and for our children. We have to draw strengths from his example. We should like if his easygoing, witty and rock-hard determination would transfer onto us. Yes, it can be done. If we are courageous enough to firmly distinguish between right and wrong, between true and false, between valuable and phony. If we are ready, like President Reagan was ready, to assume the responsibility of articulating the difference between the good and the bad. Reagan has used the power of his nation for promoting global progress towards freedom, democracy, and respect for human rights. His most important message as follows: nations can defend their values only together. For this reason, transatlantic cooperation is more important than ever. That is why Hungary, my homeland, considers its ties with the European Union and the United States equally important. It is amazing that countries, former members of the socialist bloc, are members of the NATO now. They are the members of the European Union. They share the same values as their one-time enemies, now allies, share. So the Reagan message had become true.